BoogeyMan band coming round the bend. Is BoogeyMan band? Is BoogeyMan band?
Greetings, my fellow Fright Fiends. Thanks so much for dropping by the Horror Zone channel. I hope everyone's doing well. Today's video is going to be celebrating the 40th anniversary of a very special film to me. This is a film that I actually saw in the movie theater when it opened on March 22nd of 1985. Of course, I'm talking about the fifth film in the Friday the 13th franchise, my favorite horror franchise of all time, and that being Friday the 13th Part 5, A New Beginning. Now, I was 10 years old when this movie came out. I was just a month shy of turning 11. My mom took me to see this. It was the opening night of the brand new theater in my hometown. They had just opened it. It was Century 9 Theater, and I still remember the searchlights out in front of the movie theater. I was becoming a big Friday the 13th fan. The subject matter still kind of scared me, but I was curious. I was a curious kid. I had friends in school. I went to Catholic school at the time, and I still remember my friend Mike Barley showing me a Fangoria magazine that had images of Friday the 13th, the final chapter. And that was before I had seen the movie. I had already seen Part 3, so I was familiar with Friday the 13th Part 3, but I hadn't seen Final Chapter yet. I would see Final Chapter a week before I saw this one in the movie theater. My dad rented it for me. I still remember it was a rainy day when I rented it for some reason, but I remember that movie really scared me. And I still think it's the scariest movie in the Friday the 13th franchise. But Part 5 was coming out, and I remember seeing the trailers for it.
If the memory of Jason still haunts you, you're not alone. Friday the 13th, Part 5, A New Beginning.
Severe trauma at age 12. Brutal self-defense, murder of a psychopathic killer. Boy, they've given him every therapy they can think of. It's a wonder his mind isn't fried with all the drugs they've given him.
The mindless, murderous fury that was buried with Jason has been reborn. Suddenly, terror has become child's play. Friday the 13th, Part 5, A New Beginning.
Based on the ending of Final Chapter, even as a little kid, I was curious how this new movie was going to be and what it was going to be like, because Jason was supposedly dead at the end of Final Chapter. So my mom took me. It was Friday night, and I remember right at the beginning of the film, I still remember seeing Corey Feldman and going, "Oh, Tommy's in this." And of course, you know, the whole opening of the film is a dream sequence, and when it cuts to an older Tommy Jarvis being driven to the halfway house rehabilitation center, Pinehurst, I was a little disappointed. I still remember that feeling of, no, I want to see Corey Feldman, because I knew Corey Feldman, you know, from Final Chapter. I knew him from Gremlins. He was actually shooting Goonies when they made this, because originally it was supposed to be Corey Feldman reprising his role. It's the only Friday the 13th I saw twice in the movie theater. I saw it when it opened, and then I saw it for my 11th birthday with a double feature of The Last Dragon. And I went with my good friend Tori, his mom Louise, and my mom to see it. And it was a great birthday for an 11-year-old. Yeah, let's get in a little history of this film, and the source material I'm using is what I call my Friday the 13th Bible. That is Crystal Lake Memories. I love this book. This is a first printing that I've had for 20 years now, and I'm really happy to be celebrating this 40th anniversary of one of my favorite horror films of all time, and I hope everyone looks forward to this, and here we go. While few would likely call A New Beginning a character study, it does make a sincere attempt to explore the mind and madness of Tommy Jarvis. Friday the 13th films have always centered around a single protagonist, usually a female, but Part 5 made an even bigger departure from the established formula by making its lead character a male. As the story begins, 5 years have passed since the events of the final chapter, with Tommy no longer a child but a young man. The script also relocated Tommy to a halfway house in the woods, of course, populated by at-risk teens with emotional problems, ranging from unexplained speech impediments to undiagnosed nymphomania to mental retardation and unhealthy fixations on chocolate bars. This required a new batch of young actors to portray it, if no less a diverse ensemble of modern teenagers than certainly a quirkier one. Part 5 also introduced a much more colorful array of adult characters than had been seen in previous Fridays. Cops, caretakers, and bona fide crazies who would populate the fictional community of Pinehurst Sanitarium. In this installment, the characters would function not only as potential victims, but as suspects, with one of them ultimately being revealed as the new Jason, borrowing a cue from the original. For Friday the 13th, the identity of Part 5's evildoer was, until the final reel, to remain a mystery. A New Beginning boasts the largest cast of any Friday film up until that time, and certainly the most varied in terms of age, ability, temperament, and attitudes. Some of them came for the paycheck, some a lark, some wanted to gain experience and bone their craft, while others freely admit that they just came to party. It was a markedly distinct and disparate batch of personalities that often mirrored the madness that was happening on camera and the looming tensions going on behind it. Principal photography on A New Beginning began in early September of 1984 in Camarillo, California, in and around the rambling orange groves of Thousand Oaks. It would be the last Friday the 13th film to shoot on the West Coast in order to maintain the secrecy of the film's storyline and to avoid the era of local unions. The film was given a befitting code named Repetition. Friday the 13th films have always been known for their edge-of-your-seat third acts, usually involving lots of running, screaming, thunder, and lightning, an eviscerated corpse or two thrown through a window, a scantily clad blonde, and that one last final scare. But the success of the previous 4 films had upped the ante by Part 5. There was not just one heroine, but also a hero and a child in peril. The stunts needed to be bigger, the thunder louder, the lightning brighter, and so much rain that even the Los Angeles Fire Department had to be called one night to drench the set when the rain machines weren't enough. Adding to the excitement or the confusion, depending on who you ask, that this time there was not just one Jason, but 2.5. While Dick Wieand assumed the role of Roy, a mild-mannered ambulance driver, who was revealed in the film's bloody climax to be the face behind the alter ego of an imposter Jason, a bereaved father out to avenge the murder of his son, another actor, stuntman Tom Morga, actually donned the familiar yet semi-modified hockey mask and portrayed the real Jason as seen in Tommy's horrific hallucinations. Danny Steinman had come to Friday the 13th from a diverse background in exploitation cinema. He began his directing career with the 1973 X-rated romp High Rise, using the pseudonym Danny Stone. If it is true that the first day of any film shoot sets the tone for the entire production, then A New Beginnings was a doozy. Steinman's more hedonistic sensibilities clashed almost immediately with those of the producers. While Friday the 13th series was hardly considered highbrow, even by its fans, A New Beginnings still needed to play in multiplexes across America. It could be bloody, that much was required. Sexy was fine too, but certainly it needed to be scary. But how far was too far? By the end of the first day's shooting, it was clear that whatever the line was to be drawn, Danny Steinman was coming dangerously close to stepping on it. It had become tradition with each new Friday the 13th film to up the body count over previous chapters, as well as devise increasingly elaborate methods of dispatching victims, no matter how sensational or incredible. Nowhere was this reflected better than in Part 5's final death toll, which reached an astonishing, some would say absurd, 22 victims by the end of the film's 95-minute run. Danny Steinman. The violence in the finished film is about 10% of what I shot. Originally, we did shoot more material with the characters. For example, the scenes with Ethel and Junior, their scenes were twice as long, and I had to take the transformation of Tommy seriously because my focus was going to be on him. But audiences wanted to get the kills. I did it in a way that I thought would get the biggest response, I just approached it like a cartoon. You can't take it seriously. Harry Manfredini, composer. When it comes to these films, it's like being a bricklayer or a plumber. All right, then the appropriate music, and then I'm done. The score for Part 5 was a noticeable evolution. I got to write a theme for Tommy, which was also to suggest something far beyond him, that there was a total madness afoot. It was necessary to use this because it was important to point the finger at previous characters, not just him, and to suggest that things were not as you might expect. So while the harmonic and melodic elements of the early scores are still present, the new material evolved from the old, so that was fun. No matter what those involved with Friday the 13th, A New Beginning felt about their creation, when it hit theaters on March 22nd, 1985, its opening weekend box office proved that there was still a sizable and hungry audience for the further exploits of Jason Voorhees. That's 1,379 screens in the United States. Part 5 became the 5th consecutive installment in the series to top the weekend box office, pulling in $8 million in its first 3 days. While somewhat less feverish as opening than that greeted the final chapter, by Monday, A New Beginning had already turned a sizable profit. But soon, the telltale signs of bad word of mouth were on the horizon. Part 5 suffered a stiffer fall-off than the previous installments in the series. Film plummeted completely out of the top 10, eventually scaring up a respectable, if far from spectacular, final take of $21.9 million. Perhaps in the end it was enough to justify the film's subtle, a decent enough new beginning for a franchise that no one ever expected to become a franchise in the first place, or as some of its makers feared, was it truly the beginning of the end for Jason? So, just reflecting, it's funny, I can still remember quite a bit about seeing this film for the first time. I remember just being, fascinated by where the story was going to go. I loved the mystery angle to it. I had a big crush on many of the actresses in this film. Of course, I have always said and will always say that Debbie Sue Voorhees, as she went by in this, is my biggest crush from the entire franchise. And, and again, I know she's naked in it. I was a little kid. I was just, about, a couple years from becoming a teenager. So starting to notice girls a lot more at that age, and just that scene stuck out to me. And I've talked about it before. And I also thought Juliet Cummings, Tiffany Helm, Melanie Kinnaman, all were gorgeous in it. And I really got the biggest kick out of Ethel and Junior. I still think my mom's favorite moment in that film is where she confronts the guy, he's just kind of a drifter that shows up at her farm.
Oh, shit. Who the fuck are you? What the fuck do you want?
That scene still makes my mom laugh, and sometimes I'll just pull that one out and just say that line perfectly, and she'll start laughing. The fact that my mom took me to this is just... my mom's awesome, and just the fact that she's not really into these films, but she took me to see this one and still gets the biggest kick out of it. I think out of all the horror movies I've ever had her take me to in my youth, this is probably the one that was her favorite. But yeah, I thought it was great that Shavar Ross was in it. I knew who he was from Different Strokes. He played Dudley, and I remember him, and I was like, oh, cool, he's in this too. And again, I really loved John Shepherd as Tommy Jarvis. Corey Feldman will always be my favorite as the character, but John Shepherd was very method in the way that he played him. This man who, as a child, went through this horrific situation where his mother and these kids that were, staying close to where his family lived were murdered, and, he took down a killer that was trying to kill his sister, and, that always that stuck with me. And as much as I was disappointed that Corey Feldman didn't come back to play the character, I still think John Shepherd did an amazing job, and he's my second favorite Tommy Jarvis. I like Tom Matthews, but I'm not as crazy about that depiction of the character as I am the way that John Shepherd played him. I also think this is truly one of the last scary Friday the 13th films. Say what you want about Danny Steinman's background and maybe his drug use and whatever else was going on the sets or in his life. I think he turned in a terrific film that I think still holds up. It could also be the editing as well. Editor Bruce Green did a great job on this film, and it's compelling. It's scary, and I love that there's that mystery element that we hadn't seen since the original film. We knew who was doing all the killings and parts 2, 3, and 4. So it was really interesting to see, kind of go back to that, red herring. Who is it? Jason's dead. Who's doing this? I really thought that was very compelling. And I think it all comes together really well. The gore, even though it was trimmed back, I think is very effective. I think the final moments in the film, I think the final act in the film is very effective. I remember it freaked me out seeing Tommy behind the door, and after the whole altercation in the barn with what we would find out would be Roy trying to get revenge for his son Joey being killed by Victor on the people at Pinehurst. And it still works for me to this day. Even as a kid, there was things I recognized. I knew it wasn't Jason. And it sounds funny saying that now, but I remember it. I remember noticing when you finally see the full reveal, when he breaks through the kitchen door after Reggie and Pam. The chevrons on the mask are different. They're blue. They're kind of going down instead of up. I noticed that right away. Plus, Jason had both his eyes. And of course, we had seen in final chapter, Tommy hit him in the side of the head with the machete and took out his left eye. So I'm like going, well, it's obviously not Jason. So even as a kid, I noticed things. I was very observant about things. And so the final reveal, I was just enthralled with the story. And I still remember leaving the theater and seeing my friend Mike Barley, the guy that had brought the Fangoria magazine to class one day and showed me some of those amazing Tom Savini effects for final chapter. I think it was him. If I remember correctly, it was him, his brother, and his dad. And I remember him asking me if I liked the movie. How was the movie been? So I thought it was so cool being kind of a shy kid, kind of an outcast kid, someone that was just happy that he got acknowledgement every once in a while. I was happy that I was noticed and I saw the movie before they did, because they were going to like the 10 o'clock show and we had gone to like the 8 o'clock show. And I also remember we lived in a condo at the time, and while we had a carport that we would park in the front, there was like a parking lot right next to the steps where you would walk down to where our place was. And there was this giant hedge that was right by where we parked, because we parked a little further down from where we usually did. And I was so freaked out. I just remember I kept thinking Jason or Roy or somebody was going to jump out of those bushes and get me. And I was on edge. As much as I loved the movie, I was on edge, and it really, really scared me. That it really was a scary moment, but one that I still remember so fondly and so vividly. And like I said, I got to see it again a few weeks later for my birthday, and it remains one of my favorite Friday the 13th movies. Friday the 13th Part 5, A New Beginning, is a part of my childhood. It's a very important film. And as I get older, I'm going to be 51 pretty soon. It's crazy to think that this film has been in my life for 40 years. And I'm so grateful that my mom took me to see it opening night of Century 9 Theater, where I grew up. And I had a blast. And I'm grateful for my childhood. I'm grateful for these times. I'm grateful that this franchise became so important to me. And I'm happy and thankful for all of the people that contributed to this film. Whether there was controversy or not, all I can tell is it made this fan very happy, and this film will live on for forever. And I'm really happy to celebrate it today. I also want to talk about this shirt. I haven't showcased this shirt yet. This is a Gutter Garb shirt that I got back in December. So I ordered it in December. I got it in January. Haven't showcased it, but wanted to also say that Gutter Garbs and Fright Rags are both going to be having exclusive Friday the 13th Part 5 A New Beginning 40th Anniversary Celebration shirts. I will put links down to both sites so people can check those out. I love this shirt. Very happy I have it. I didn't want to showcase it until I did this video. Friday the 13th Part 5 A New Beginning 40th Anniversary Celebration. Grateful to everybody that contributed to the making of this film. I'm so happy I get to talk about it here with everyone else. So share your thoughts about this film. If you're a fan of the franchise, it's a film you don't like because it's not Jason. It's kind of got, for me, it's like that Halloween 3 thing. For some reason, I was like the camp that didn't like Halloween 3 for so long because no Michael Myers. But this one, I never understood the backlash because it still was in it still dealt with a Jason, even though it wasn't the original Jason. So that one, it wasn't as hard for me to get into. And I just, like I said, it was my first theater going experience with the franchise. And it's always meant so much to me. But much like Halloween 3, I know there's people that don't like it because it doesn't feature the real Jason. But curious what other people think about the film. If you guys are fans, leave me some thoughts down in the comment section below. Let me know if it's one of your favorite films in the franchise, if it's your least favorite film in the franchise. We'd love to hear everybody's thoughts. And thanks so much again for stopping by the Horror Zone channel. I hope everyone's doing well. Talk to you again real soon. Take it easy. Stay scared as always.